Hello, let me check in with the first 28% of A Little Hatred, the start of a new series by Joe Abercrombie, which is actually set in the same world as his first Law trilogy, just, I don't know, 20 years later. This is where Glockter, Sandan Glockter, is still kicking around, but it sounds like maybe things are going to focus more on his daughter Sabine, who, inherits a lot of the old man's sharpness and ruthlessness. Yes, we get various characters. It's funny going. I just finished in the Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne, which was sort of grim, darkish fantasy, multiple storylines, some of them coming together at the end of the first volume, but obviously continuing on. And this has very much the same feel of that, of we've got various things being set up. It is done well. I might, maybe a slight mistake of spinning right into this after listening to in the shadow of the gods, just because it's like, oh, okay, it's more of the same. I don't know if I need a steady diet of this, because I find myself with not a tremendous amount to say, even though I'm enjoying it for the most part. Like Clover, kind of an old warrior who is actually, you can see why he's become an old warrior, because he's not looking to run headlong into fight after fight. And indeed, he has a conversation near the end of this section that I've been listening to, where it's just like, yeah, you get into the ring all those times, and you just, the luck of the odds, you're gonna die. So maybe you avoid getting in the ring. He apparently was one of the shield bearers when, he was 18 when Logan Ninefingers had his big dramatic battle with huge monster in the first Law series, and indeed won and was hated by everyone, because he killed tons of people, not just his enemies, but he would go in berserker mode and kill his friends and his allies, and so everyone fucking hated his guts. But of course, there's all these young guys who just think he's the most awesomest, and maybe a bit of Joe Abercrombie commenting on how Logan Ninefingers was probably one of the more compelling characters. I mean, he was kind of the main character of those books. There was multiple storylines, but he's probably the one that was like, oh, this is the kind of the symbol of those books. And I mean, I guess in a very grim, dark kind of way, he was, but definitely not a hero as much as a protagonist that you followed along and had a compelling story, which I think I like Glockter, who was a twisted man, completely twisted and tortured, who then became a really successful and good torturer himself, because he knew how well to torture. Maybe the opposite lesson you would think someone might get from being tortured, which would be, oh, how horrible torture is. I'd never want to inflict what had been done to me on someone else. It's like, no, I understand pain so well that I'm really good at inflicting it upon others. That's that kind of world that Joe Abercrombie is going. See, I am talking about those books, so who knows? Maybe these books will lie on me. I quite like this Rika girl, who is apparently has what almost kind of seems like presents as like cerebral palsy or something like that, who has the long sight and can see the future, and is being kind of trying to be educated in how to do it. When we meet her, she is fleeing, getting killed by complete fucking asshole douchebag who's decided to rush in and burn some villages and stuff like that to be really awesome. And she gets to overhear him saying like, oh well, I'm gonna rape her. I'm going to give her to men to rape, and then I'm going to give my horse to rape, and all these kind of really wonderful things. She luckily gets out of this alive. Mostly, one of the main reasons being because a man who's been sent to try and knock some sense into this butthead um, declines to capture her when he has a chance. He's just, nope, you keep on going. He doesn't like the idea of hunting young women. Clover, he's kind of a bit of a Falstaffian. This is the old warrior who's become an old warrior because he actually has some sense. Also maybe a bit of a drinker, but also has sense. We also have Lttl the Lionhearted, who at first you think is, oh, drunken, carousing, kind of dissipated king in waiting, but it turns out he's actually kind of got a lot of smarts to him, and we see that when he fights his father, kind of dueling practice, and he makes a point of making sure that he loses to the old man and loses convincingly, and says like, no, I need to go and fight these people in the north. And the king says, well, I'll let you do it, but I'll only give you this men, and you're going to have to raise the other things. And he's like, okay, and he's going to do that. And I think he's in the part of doing the publicity for that when he's fighting this giant monster of a guy. When Ritka comes, who he apparently made fun of her, but she was a lot taller than him, and knocked him down and sat on him. So yeah, I have to say there's probably is enough going on that maybe there is enough to talk about. It's just kind of getting out of that, okay, I just did the one grimdark fantasy, now I'm doing another. I actually need to do a review of the first grimdark fantasy. I should go over my little recordings on that and see if I can't drag out a little bit of even if it's just a review for this channel, that would be not a bad thing. All right, I will leave it there. That is my thoughts so far at 28% of Lttl Htrd by Joe Abercrombie. I can't remember what the name of this. I think it might be The Age of Machines or something, because it seems like Adua is going through industrialization. There's been some enclosure. There was a soldier come home from the war to find out that he was being kicked off his land. He was being kicked off his land and killed the muscle boys who'd come to get him. Hey, come on. Come on. Sorry. Constant vigilance around Shea Manor. Yes, he killed them, and they had to flee to a different city under an assumed name to try and get. But he's basically, it's an old soldier who, basically it's violence. He's PTSD or whatever. He's ready for violence, and his whole body is like yearning for it, and he just wants to stay away from it. And of course, he gets into this thing where the guy who does recognize him and gets him hired a job, it's like, oh, we're all about revolution and about overthrowing the kings, and we'll all become kings. And he's like, oh God, I promised my wife I wouldn't get away, I'd stay away from violence. I don't want trouble, but trouble. And indeed, there seems to be political machinations going on about trying to adjust the political system, which Glocter is definitely working against. And we see in a little subplot that he's used this young woman who lived up in the camps, who's decided, I'm going to be on the winning side, and that's definitely the royals, and infiltrates a group, betrays them. They are all killed, and she maybe is going to recruit one guy young guy who reminds her of her brother, which is probably maybe the first and last mistake she makes. So yes, okay, I will stop there. Apparently I have enough to say about it, or at least I have enough to plot summarize on it and think about this very dog-eat-dog world that Joe Abercrombie enjoys making. And that's something in itself, maybe a larger picture thing to look at. is the hard, the cold logic that there is in this, and is it the only logic, or is it just the logic that Joe Abercrombie wants to put to us as the real logic? Perhaps, maybe, maybe not. That's just my thought for tonight. All right, I will stop there. More videos later.